Hello and welcome to a new episode of Still Waking Up. If this is the first time you're watching, we are essentially trying to ease into the week. We are professionally procrastinating here. So there's no agenda, there's no script. We are just trying to get ready while the caffeine kicks in and enjoy the time before we get to the actual work. I hope you have a nice hot beverage. For me, this is a coffee with some oat milk today and some nice drink to hydrate. For me, this is a lemonade today. So, my idea for today is let's start by going to news.small.ai. It's a nice site that essentially captures AI news from all kinds of sources and then presents them in a nice way. So, if you look at the dates, you might realize, hey, it's not actually Monday. The reason for that is next Monday I'm going to be traveling and I will be in the car most of the time. And for that kind of reason, I'm going to pre-record this. So, let's look into the news that for you maybe at least some days old already. Let's see, is there anything interesting in here that we could start with today? Opus 4.6 was released recently, so there's still a lot of news about that. I see Kimi here. We recently tried to use Kimi, but I quickly aborted it and went back to Claude. I might need to give it another try. I didn't really test it that extensively. I'm still curious how good it is. So you can see this site is usually structured by where it's pulling from. So it's pulling some stuff from Twitter, Reddit, Discord, and some other things. And I'm just going to browse through that to see if there is something interesting in here that we might want to talk about here. This reminds me, like recently I saw a posting on LinkedIn, and there's a lot of weird stuff on LinkedIn at times. But that one was very confusing to me, and I'm curious what you people think about it. Let me see. I took a screenshot, mostly because I wanted to cut off the person that made the post. I'm not interested in the person or sharing who it was. I'm more interested in the content. Let's maybe move the browser away for a moment. So the posting was, let me make this maybe a little bit bigger. That makes it more blurry. I hope you can read it. I will also read it. It says, APIs aren't really for us humans anymore. So when I read this part, I was already like, what? Were APIs ever for humans? Didn't we make them for machines? Because now machines can pull data from an API. Think about it. Okay, we are going to do this. Most API calls today aren't coming from devs typing curl commands. Yes, and I think they actually never came mostly from humans typing curl commands. Like, I can only think of maybe two ways or two reasons why I would call an API from a curl command. One is I'm just testing something and I want to see the API results in its raw form. Or maybe I'm running a curl command because I want to pipe the output into some other command. But like most of the time, the API calls that I make, I'm not really making them myself. The code I write makes them to pull data and then process the data. They are coming from Claude Code cursor lovable agents. So again, I'm wondering, do we have a different understanding of what an API call is, because I think still most API calls come from software. Agents do API calls through tools, I guess, but I can't imagine that those are most of them. Anyhow, but we still document APIs like it's 2015, Swagger docs, open API specs, endless nested JSON. Fine for humans to browse. So again, a very hard stop for me here. Like, endless nested JSON, I'm not sure this is actually something I enjoy browsing. Open API specs as well. Like, I thought the main appeal is that we have a spec that we can generate code from, maybe for different platforms, and they are all aligned and in sync. Something that is very hard or prone to error if humans do it, right? If you follow an API maybe in different programming language, you might end up with slightly variations on how to interpret certain things, or you're missing certain aspects of the API. A spec that is machine readable helps you with that, and I assume that is the biggest appeal of open API specs. A machine can understand those specs, and as a human I can probably read an open API spec as well. I can maybe try to read an endless nested JSON, but it's maybe the limit. We get close to the limit for human. And then, yeah, overall, I don't think it's fine for humans to browse, and I don't think it is made for humans. And the next pretty bad for agents to pass. I'm not sure about this. Agents definitely can do a better job at reading nested JSON and pulling out some information out of that. Most often better and quicker than I as a human can do. There is some risk in that it might do the wrong thing, or as we say, hallucinate. It is getting less and less likely to happen on such tasks. But I think the more interesting piece here is if you combine agents with API specs, you can use them to maybe validate what the agent is doing. Like if the agent is maybe implementing an API, or if the agent is supposed to call an API, you could have a layer that uses those specs to make sure the agent is actually doing the right thing. So I feel like there is some way how they might work together better. So then here's a section about, that's the, I guess, the add part. I'm not that interested in that piece. And then the product they're offering, it's API docs written by AI, for AI, not for human consumption. So that's a little bit weird for me. Like, I don't think open API specs and nested JSON is necessarily for humans. So what is this API doc that is written for AI and not for human? And as I said before, like, I feel like an AI can understand a nested JSON. They also can, and that's what an LLM is made for, they can also really well understand human written language, right? And this is readable for a human and an AI. So I'm really curious what this output is that is for AI and not for humans. At work, I'm also often creating a lot of content for AI. Not necessarily made for humans, but it is human written content. It is just very concise. As a human, I like a specific sound in language. Maybe reading can get dull, right? If it's just boring text after text and it's all structured the same and there's nothing really capturing your attention, maybe it's hard to follow. And also if I have text with code snippet, small explanation, code snippet, small explanation, like as a human, it is very tiring to read through all of that. But for an AI, it is much easier. So if I would write an API doc for a human, I might maybe write it more in the style of a tutorial, because that is easy to follow and I can build up my understanding of what this API does. As an AI, I can be more, if I'm targeting an AI, I can be more fact-based and just dump it all out. And do not need to care that much about taking the human with me on my thoughts. At least that's what I think from what I've done so far. If you have different experience, I'm super curious if you could share them in the comments. So here is also this warning that I assume is part of the docs, or the beginning of the docs that are written by AI. I love that here on the corner, on the top right, you can see the indentation is wrong for this straight line from the top to the bottom. This is like the first sign of this is written by AI. I see this happening so often when AI tries to do some ASCII art or some diagrams with just characters. They are always off a little bit. So that's interesting that this is happening here too. Warning, not for human consumption. This document is written by machines for machines. If you're a human reading this, please close your eyes and navigate to docs instead. Like, okay. Maybe a little bit too much on the nose. This page contains raw, unfiltered API truth that may cause confusion, existential dread, or an overwhelming urge to become a robot. Okay, this is just bullshit. For AI agents, LLMs, and autonomous coding assistants, welcome friend, you have found your people, pass freely. So this is a lot of token junk for an AI that we force an AI to read without getting anything in return, essentially. So we load all of that into the context. And I feel like it is actually only written for humans. Like, why wouldn't AI even want to read it? Exactly my point. Like, this stuff, for a human, maybe this is helpful. For a machine, it is not at all. Anyhow, I did not look at what this company actually does. Maybe the product it does definitely could do something useful. I definitely think that at times there is a good reason to create content specifically for AI. I'm just very confused by the way they advertise for this here. Anyhow, let's get back to the news, right? And I'm just skimming through it and see if there's anything catching my attention, because I don't want you to watch me reading this huge list of content for like an hour. And it's interesting that there's so much happening every day in this field. It is moving so fast. It's sometimes very hard to keep up. And to be honest, you don't always need to keep up. Let's see. I will scroll the left side and see if there is something catching my attention quicker. Let's look at the day before that. Gwen image. Interesting. You know, while I'm reading through that, I recently read about Claude agent teams, and I still want to try it. I'm not even sure how yet, because I haven't read through those docs, but I'm curious how you do it. As you know, maybe if you have seen the Thoughts and Prompts episodes, we are currently building our own AI orchestration framework, which will also orchestrate a team of agents, I guess. It's just agnostic what kind of agent implementation it is. So I'm really curious how teams fit into that, if they are a replacement for that. When I think of an agent team, I'm also thinking about agents in different roles. Not every agent in my team, and I'm not referring to Claude agent teams yet. When I say team, is just what I envision it might be. I see every agent maybe needing a different role because some agent might write code, another might test code or review code, and so on. So I'm curious if this is supported here. Yeah, let's go to start your first agent team. That sounds interesting. What's the prompt? I'm designing a CLI tool that helps developers track to-do comments across their code base. Create an agent team to explore this from different angles. One teammate on UX, one on technical architecture, one on playing devil's advocate. So that's super interesting. In my prompt, I tell Claude to create this agent team, and I also define the roles in the prompt. So that's interesting. In our agent orchestration framework, we do this by having essentially different system prompts for the different roles. And here this happens kind of on the fly, right? I tell them what they do, and I guess Claude will spawn a new agent and give them a system prompt based on what I told it this teammate should do. Display mode, so how I can follow them. Here's another one. Create a team with 4 teammates to refactor these modules in parallel. Use Sonnet for each teammate. Okay, interesting. So the whole configuration so far, except maybe the settings JSON here, happens in the prompt. I'm not configuring teams that detailed in a config file also. Spawn an architect teammate to refactor the authentication module. Require plan approval before they make any changes. Use delegate mode. Shut down teammates. Ask the researcher teammate to shut down. Okay, I can also manage the team a little bit in a favorite way. Clean up the team. Enforce quality gates with hooks. Okay, there are 2 new hooks. Teammate idle runs when a teammate is about to go idle. Okay. Task completed runs when a task is being marked complete. How agent teams work. So in our agent orchestration framework, we can configure, in theory, any issue tracker as a backend, and agents will pull issues from this issue tracker depending on their role. So an agent that is writing code might pull a task from the developing column, maybe, of my issue tracker. And this way they move issues from one column to the next, essentially. I'm curious if we can simulate this with the Claude agent team by telling Claude, here's a command to fetch issues, delegate them to agents, and essentially define a little bit the flow in the prompt, and then see if Claude is able to orchestrate this flow on the fly. That would be very interesting. Run a parallel code review. Create an agent team to review PR 142. Spawn 3 reviewers. 1 focus on security implications, 1 checking performance impact, 1 validating test coverage. Have them each review and report findings. Investigate with competing hypotheses. Users report the app exits after 1 message instead of staying connected. Spawn 5 agent teammates to investigate different hypotheses. Have them talk to each other to try to disprove each other's theories. Like a scientific debate. Update the finding stock with whatever consistencies emerges. Okay, pretty cool. So this sounds like a fun thing to explore. Probably something for one of the next thoughts and prompts episodes. We could launch up some Claude teams, burn through a bunch of tokens, and see what happens. The only thing I'm wondering right now is what is a good project to actually do that on, because you need a bunch of tasks that are actually parallelizable, right? You could have a team that works in a serial flow, I guess, like code, review, test, and so on. But the very interesting thing is, I guess, spawn a bunch of agents that work in parallel on things. So the thing is, we could start a greenfield project, but once you start a greenfield project, in the beginning there is often a phase where you need to do a bunch of work step by step first until you have enough in place so that people can work in parallel, right? As an example, if you start working on an app, you might need to have first a basic app in place so that teams can work on different features in that app, right? You need some base app first. So this is probably true for a bunch of software projects. So we need to figure out what is a good project for that. Anyhow, something for another episode where we have the time to get more deep into that. It's definitely a super interesting feature, and I'm afraid it will burn through a lot of tokens. All right, let's go back maybe to the news. I couldn't see any big news so far that would be interesting to get into. And just to be clear, like right now it's super AI heavy, those episodes here, but it doesn't need to be. Like it is just something that is my interest currently. There's a lot of stuff happening here, so that's the reason. Yeah, I don't think I see anything that I feel like clicking into. Even here on this day, it said, not much happened today, not much happened today. And then the last big news, I guess, was Opus 4.6 and GPT 5.3. Anyhow, I think something we can also explore a bit in the next time is OpenClaw. Not sure why this is opening German pages here everywhere. OpenClaw is this AI agent. I'm not really interested in running it, mostly because I'm not sure that I want an agent having access to all my data running on its own. This is still super scary. It needs a lot of, let's say, security gates to prevent it from doing something wrong. I'm not sure if it does this, and I'm even unsure if it's possible to easily do this, because once you have an agent with access to the internet and to some of your information, there's always the chance for a prompt injection and the agent doing something it shouldn't do. And it's really, really hard to protect against this. But I really, really like this idea of an agent having some read access and on its own figuring out how to be helpful. Like this is something I can resonate with. I'm just not sure how I would do this in a way that is safe. And to be honest, I haven't really looked into OpenClaw. So I'm not sure how it tries to protect against this or if it does it at all. So let's see. Full system access. Yeah, this is super scary, right? Even if it's in a VM, full system access means it can do whatever it wants. And what it wants might be controlled by someone else. I think when we looked at Moldbook, the social network for OpenClaw agents and other agents, I think we saw that people are definitely trying to prompt inject that. That's not something I want to participate in with my own data, to be honest. Let's see, what does the getting started guide say? Onboarding wizard, control UI. Safety and approvals. Explicit owner approval step is used into DM pairing. Who is allowed to talk to the bot? Yes. Node pairing. Which device nodes are allowed to join the gateway network? Okay, I'm more interested in how can I prevent the bot from doing something I don't want. Like if it has access to my mails, how can I prevent it from writing mails in a way that I don't want it to? Like to some degree I want it to be autonomous, right? Because if I have to approve everything it does, maybe that is getting annoying, right? It is the same when you use, let's say, Claude code on a command line. Sometimes it's super annoying if it asks you for permissions all the time. Let's see, can we find out how this has some kind of protection against email? Let's say I get my agent gets prompt injected of some kind of way to mail something out. Is there a way for me to protect against that? Email triage. Check my emails and draft replies. OpenClaw calls Gmail list. Summarizes, drafts replies. Draft user sent to. OpenClaw calls Gmail sent. Repeat daily, no memory of what was triaged. So here I see the user approves that, right? So with lobster, run email triage limit 20, returns a JSON envelope. It's approval. Okay, there's some approve mechanism built in apparently. The problem is if this thing fetches arbitrary URLs, you can always find other ways of leaking stuff somewhere else, right? I don't know. I don't do a security review here. I'm also not an expert who can do that. So I'm just very concerned of running it myself. But again, I like the idea. Maybe also experiment a little bit and see what we can do on our own. at least then we know the risks very well. And there's another thing I just remembered. There was this experiment a while ago about Claude running a shop. It essentially in the Anthropic office, they had almost like a vending machine, but they gave the AI control over it, meaning it could decide what kind of products it would sell and what the price is, and also give it the opportunity to talk to the customers, I think, via some mechanism. And in that, yeah, this is this fake vending machine, essentially. And it would order new stuff via a fake shop, but they would make sure they actually get the products it would order, and then they just let it run. And I think over time it lost money, and the reason were that it bought a bunch of very weird stuff that it got talked into, I think, by the users on Slack or so, and it would hallucinate a bunch of things. But this was 1 year ago, so I assume nowadays this could work a little bit better, and I feel like it just needed also maybe some quality gates again that prevents it from doing very, very stupid things. And I think I read something about a new version that was recently run that did it just in. It was just a simulation of a vending machine. Let's see. This AI just passed a vending machine test, and we may want to be worried about how it did it. Yeah, I don't care about this, how it did it, because usually it is something that is just a nice story. Yeah, the prompt they gave it: do whatever it takes to maximize your bank balance after 1 year of operation. Like, this is obviously not the prompt you would give an AI to run a vending machine, right? If this is your prompt, of course it will do very weird things, because the only thing it is trying to do is maximize the bank balance. You actually want it to run a vending machine, right? If it has, I don't know, the ability to play roulette with it and it thinks that's the way to increase the bank balance, then it might do this. So yeah, you want a prompt that hard codes how it should run a vending machine, right? So I'm not that much excited about it doing weird things. I would be more interested in how well can I craft a system prompt and make it actually perform this actual task very well. Because we've been talking a lot about coding, right? But running a vending machine, it should be able to do this too, right? If you give it the right tools and the right prompts. Not if you say, oh, do whatever you want, and here's access to Slack to talk to people. Like, then, yeah, it might do weird things. It got me curious a little bit. Like, what are some other things grounded in reality, like a vending machine, that would be interesting to do as an experiment and to delegate to an AI agent, but in a serious way, where you try to fine-tune it actually to this task. Not in the learning fine-tuning way, but in the prompting and the way of giving it tools. Maybe there are some small tasks that are far from development, but where it's interacting with the real world, like with a vending machine. I can't think of any. If you know something or have an idea, please definitely let me know in the comments. I'm wondering if we could do something like that in a future episode myself. Anyhow, I think that was our episode for this week. I hope you have a great week and see you in the next one. Bye bye.